5 o'clock, so we'll call this meeting of the Ad hoc County Facility Planning Committee to order. I will ask the clerk to take the roll.
Carol. Here. Kramer.
Here.
Harry. Here. Herb.
Here.
Frank. Williamson. And Cooey. All right, you have 4 of 7.
Very good. Are we in compliance with the open meetings law?
Yes, Mr. Chair, these properly noticed.
Good. We have an 11-point agenda. Do I have a motion to approve? Motion by Kramer, second by Perry. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We also have minutes from our April 2nd meeting. Are there any corrections, additions, clarifications needed on those minutes? Hearing none, I will declare those minutes to be approved as presented. Item 6, public comment. Do we have anybody online or here in person? No, we don't. To deliver public comment to this committee? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 7, discussion and possible action, county facilities master plan.
So I think the original plan for today was for me to come in and have a year-by-year setup. When I called and talked with Carol about bonding, and Leanna was also a part of that call, we really started talking about lots of big picture things. And her thought or recommendation, instead of doing short-term borrowing for many years for these projects, is to consider 2 bigger loans to pay over like the next 10 years to complete the projects. One thing she reminded us, and that's why I have on the sheet, under 5 million each. If you get over that 5 million, you have to spend it within 2 years, or you have to pay all the interest back. And that's where we're at with the tower project. You know, it was supposed to be done in 2 years. It didn't. So when the project is completely finished, all interest we earn has to be returned. If you do under 5 million, you have 3 years to get the work done, which seems to be a little bit more manageable. So I guess the question that I'm bringing to you, this committee, is, do you want to consider doing the 2 loans or do the yearly short-term borrowing? I did start to gather up what that dollar amount will be. And if we decide we want to do the 2 loans, I would ask that you give me a month to work with all department heads to try to get that information together, to work with Corey to be able to say, here's what the amounts would be. I'm thinking around 6 million total. From what I have, I'm at 3.5 thus far. There's still quite a bit though that I need to.
How do you get those numbers? Oh my gosh.
Do you think that's too high or too low? Oh,
I just to even come up with numbers for it.
so, you know, like the courtroom, Corey's already given me a quote, a ballpark of $1 million to redo that floor. I know like the generators are gonna be about 100,000 each. I've talked with Randy, like switching the penthouse air handlers, he thinks that's $1 million. We've talked about the HVAC across the street, and if you just replace the 17 units, that's 120,000. So that's kind of what we're working on, but I talked with Josh, he's got to get me numbers. Like the roof replacement is probably 200,000. I'm assuming, and I'm just put a rough number in, the fire suppression system at highways. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's $1 million.
Well, that's what worries me, that you know, we're gonna commit to a certain amount of loan, but a little squishy on exactly how much these are gonna cost.
So we need to get better with
Yeah,
these
yeah.
numbers. That's where if I had the month to work on gathering all that
Take your time.
information. Yes, yeah.
Can somebody bring me up to date on the $8 million loan for the radio towers? I was not privy to any of that information.
So we took it, I think that in 2022, because we're starting to do some research to get you guys good numbers of where things are at for tomorrow night. And jump in here, Derek, if you need to. In 2022, the board approved borrowing up to $8.5 million for the radio tower project. In 2023, we took out 8.1 million. The total project was about 7.8, but there was extra money built in. It sounds like as a contingency or for extra projects.
But what prioritized that? What was the reason?
For doing the radio project?
911?
The reason was we were about 10 years late replacing our emergency communication system. It was failing. Both the dispatch console here in this building and the towers, and we had many gaps in coverage. So we finally got together and got information on what it would take to get a digital new system with today's technology, with sufficient tower sites to minimize the gaps in coverage as much as we could. It's still not perfect. I think the goal was what, 95% or
I think so.
something like
Yeah.
that. So it's
Way
much
better
better,
than it was.
way better than it was. Still not perfect, but way better than it was. We had terrible dead spots up by Viola and Casanova, and there were a couple others too. But we've built new towers in those areas, so now there is better signal there. And we're just now finally getting to the point where they're switching the system on. So it's taken us that long to get it constructed and functional.
I know about radio signals in this county, and I know about commercial radio signals in this county, so I know how difficult that is. I just didn't know what prompted, I mean, that's a huge expenditure.
Yeah.
And
It is.
I think it was, really boiled down to public safety. And we have officers in spots where they can't get out. We have people who are in spots where they, when someone's there helping them, there isn't any way to communicate.
Before we did the project, or it might have already been underway, but I know there was an incident in one of those dead spots where an officer couldn't reach anybody for backup and yeah, very bad things.
I, as recently as Saturday night, they needed good radio, so.
Yep. So, and then it's since been a process of making sure our equipment is up to date, and they did finally get a brand new console for dispatching here in this building. There were times where they were dispatching with walkie-talkies because the console in the building was down.
Oh, wow.
It was a hand-me-down console from Lacrosse County when they upgraded. The radio vendors were having to buy parts on eBay because they couldn't get new parts anymore. Yeah, it was a very bad situation.
I'm convinced. But I don't have the paperwork for today. It's not on my,
The packet's not,
Packet.
it's not coming up on his iPad.
Here, I can give you,
I have a copy of it, Trish.
you got a copy? I got a copy, but I
read
don't
it
have
earlier.
one.
There's no, nothing in the packet. Thank you.
What's your copy of?
What's
The
that?
project list.
Oh, the project list.
So I did go through, at the last meeting, I had it broke down by year. So this time I went through and just really listed the projects. And then I listed projects already funded. So those are some of our 2026 ones. I did not build in the future project of the highway, the additional storage building, because I really wasn't sure what your thoughts were on that. And I did have quite a few conversations with Brittany, and Pine Valley really does have the funding to be able to meet their needs out there for their projects. I also did a little bit more work on the jail plan. We talked about being able to move in 2030. That panicked me a little bit. So through having some conversations, if we could finalize a location in 2027, finalize the plans for construction in 2028, start construction in 29, that gets us in the building in 31. I think that's a little more realistic option. We could potentially bump that up a year, but that means we've got 5 months, or 6 months, 7 months to try to get something this year. That might be a little tight.
Depending on how quickly we can find a suitable location.
Correct.
If we are able to arrive at one early, well, then the rest of it can start moving.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
with us not having one at the present time, yeah.
What locations are we actually considering?
We've looked at a few. There is a site in the North Industrial Park that the city was a strong proponent of that we looked at, and Corey showed us a layout of what it might be like if we built there. There was some concern about proximity to the river and low flooding that could happen around that, even if not the building itself, but very close to it. So we looked at another site near the fairgrounds, which was technically possible, but neighbors weren't thrilled. Not that any neighbors are ever going to be thrilled.
No.
We have looked at potentially going this direction and taking out a block of Hazeltine Street and the property across the street and expanding that way. Could be possible, would be a lot of infrastructure to deal with and some pretty big cost to do that. So we looked at that. We looked out by Pine Valley because the county does have some land out there. But realistically, with what we already own, we'd have to look at acquiring some additional land to make it feasible. I don't know if there are any other sites we looked.
I think the campus idea was thrown out, but I think
Yeah.
it was shot down.
Yeah. The city indicated that they would not be willing to be cooperative with rezoning and putting anything on the campus site as far as a jail, so.
You said they were pro for the industrial park.
Well, very strongly pro, yes.
Is there any way we could, bring in landfill and build that up a little bit out there?
I would assume there are ways you can do just about anything if you're willing to spend the money.
Well, we could always go take that dirt that's sitting down there. You go to Richland Hospital. There's a lot down there. You think they'd miss anything?
We could take the rubble from demolishing the buildings out of the campus and put it out.
True.
So those are the only sites we've looked at in detail, and we got some just initial ballpark drawings from our consultant with those. We haven't looked at any other sites in detail. There may be others. Trying to find a sufficient quantity of buildable land that wouldn't be just for the jail, but then potentially for future expansion of the courthouse or, other county office space is the challenge. That would be the advantage of staying here is because we're already here. Could we look at, potentially co-locating with the city someday? We could. There's all kinds of different possibilities we could consider.
I think there's the idea of like a public safety building, which would be fire, EMS, law enforcement from the two all working together in the building.
I was gonna bring that up in terms of if that is a scenario that we need to explore, we need to start right away exploring that. I mean, there's our timeline. But back to the loan financial piece. Can you tell us more about why Carol thought the 2.5 million was the way to go?
So for next year, our debt service is going to decrease by $1 million. So she said adding it on now might be helpful because it will keep the tax levy level. So we won't have a dip and then go back up. So she said, we really want to work to do that. We talked about then potentially in the future having our short-term borrowing be for only two things, road projects and equipment. So if we could really work hard, get everything done, get the work done, have a functional place for everybody to work, that would be beneficial.
So wait, so then there'd be.
And I think it's that controlling the cost.
Is that because the 5 million loan is a lower interest rate or?
Well, the short-term borrowing, we just get it and we pay it all within that 3 months.
I also wondered how much could we borrow and still pay it off before the deadline for short term? In other words, we've been doing $1 million, but how much ability do we have to pay off a larger number?
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Derek, but if we do short-term borrowing, we just add it on to people's taxes. So we can do as much as we want,
Right.
But you still have to pay it off by a certain time.
Oh, yeah.
but you get it back from people's tax bills.
So the cash flow is such that you can do that.
Yeah.
So you could do
They
it,
pay that much more.
you could do it a larger number then.
Right.
You could.
And I think the idea of doing this separate, like the two different instances, is kind of what Trish said is, making sure you're tax exempt or exempt, taxable bonding. So there's the two types of bonding, and those two types of bonding, whether they're tax exempt or not, then have the stipulation that you spend it within a certain amount of time based on the amount of the loan to make sure you're not paying that arbitrage interest back like we had to do for the radio tower project. So it's really just a tiny thing and not having to pay that additional interest back. You're not really, and that's an interest that you're earning and is really not yours to earn because you have to pay it back within that time frame. So I think it's just the type of bonding, whether it's tax exempt or not, and then the timing in which to pay that back or to have the money spent.
I think
So
the other
you're-
thing that we have found is we really struggle to get all our projects done within a 1 year time period.
Yep.
And with short-term borrowing, we should. You
Yep.
should get it in December 19th or whatever the date is, and it should be spent by December 31st of the following year.
So there is a deadline to spend the money.
Mhm.
For short term, yes, for when we do those once a year, short-term borrowing,
okay.
yes.
The 5 million has a 3-year deadline.
Correct.
Yeah, and they vary depending on the type of, right, they
Yeah.
vary. So yes, there are timelines that are very dependent on the type of farm.
Let's do the 5.
Yeah,
Give ourselves the most flexibility with still not stretching it out over 20 years, so.
Pardon me if you've already said it, but what impact did the $8 million have on the tax budget? Do we know that?
Well,
It's already being felt now because the repayment has started.
correct. So it's about, I think the payments are about 100, there's the two principal payments, the interest payment, and I want to say one's like 163. Maybe it's like 300, I don't know. I can look. We know.
Oh, I don't have what the monthly payments are.
I can look at the
Okay.
budget for this year and see what the bond payments are from, so.
Sure.
Trish, I had asked about the bond chart. It'd be handy to have that to, I know we don't have it for this right now, but for the next time we do, it'd be handy to see when things get paid off,
Okay,
see what the payments are, to answer these kind of questions.
yeah. Yeah. Okay,
Trish, do you have that chart? That one I update every year, so we.
yeah, so it's always in our, budget packet.
I
Yes.
just couldn't
But
find it on my iPad.
That's fine.
I don't know where it's at.
So this year, for 2026, for the radio tower project, we paid principal of 150,000 for principal, and then interest was 318,000 for the radio tower, so it's about, 500,000. And that's gonna go up, those rates are gonna go up a little bit, or that amount, so that money, Rod, is just, put against the tax levy every year outside of the allowable levy limit because it was approved borrow. So,
And it paid off what year?
2035, 30. Let me find my little tracker.
2038.
There, 30.
Yep.
So it was a 50-year
Yeah.
borrow.
So it sounds like we're confident 2 5 million segments should get us through the list. And so we wouldn't initiate the second 5 until needed.
2 years in, right,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. Mhm.
It's $3 million loans or $4 million,
Right.
as long as it's under the 5,
Yes,
we can
Yeah.
decide how we want to stack them up and which ones go first. And then what was she thinking as far as repayment period for those?
what she said is if we could then have them where they're done in a 10-year period. And what number she threw out was 2038, and she said if we have this loan done and all our other loans done by 2038, we could then be in a position that we could consider building a new courthouse.
Actually planning ahead.
Yes.
We'd be in position to.
Right,
Yeah.
wouldn't mean we would need to. It would really depend on if we find that this is functional based on all of these projects that we're doing, all the work that we're doing. Or we could build it in stages again. You could build just the Justice Center, which incorporates the courts and like the second floor, and then do an administrative wing 10 years after that, potentially. I mean, you've got options.
I wish I'd been able to make the last meeting, because a lot of this stuff, I listened to the video, I read the notes, and I'm trying to be nice to be able to run the scenarios a little bit, where we just build the law enforcement and then remodel here to get everything else. I can't believe, I would think that might be a better solution than a whole new courthouse, especially since, well, what are you gonna do with this thing now? You know?
Right. Yeah.
well, they did talk too that the jail part down there, the walls are so thick that it's kind of, they did mention that, maybe.
You could, Could remodel it.
It could remodel it, but the walls are thicker and
Yeah.
there's more concrete to go through.
So it's built to be a jail,
And yeah, because
because
of
it's built to be a
the
jail.
jail, yeah.
Understood, but it's doable.
And,
That's,
Yes.
and the new jail will be built to be a jail too.
oh yes, realistically, the old part of the building has pretty thick walls too, so.
Absolutely.
But you guys have done stuff like this before. Remember you did some of those geo refunding bonds for 2.5 million for capital improvements projects where we went through and kind of did countywide, and I remember taking the equipment lines out of budgets and
Yes.
doing things like that. So this is not something that y'all haven't done before to
Yes.
some degree. I think the
Right.
value in this is it does knock off a lot of projects on that list that are going to make this building, viable at least long enough that when you get to the point to do something else or pivot, you would still have a building here that's gonna function and work if that's what the future is gonna look like for the next 10 years, because it probably is what the future is gonna look like for the next 10 years. You're not building a new courthouse tomorrow. And, there's been several projects that have been identified on here that really should be addressed. And, this would at least do, not even what I would call a Band-Aid, but at least do something to address all the concerns we have with this building to make it viable and to make it usable. So in 10 years, if you get to the point where you're like, oh, we can still continue here, then that's great. But,
Yes.
you're not then waiting 10 more years for even more stuff to get addressed and then have the building be even less usable than what it is now, functionally. So I think it's a smart idea to do those different issuances of borrowing because it's going to address lots of needs that time has been put into identifying and still moving forward, and being able to pivot later, so.
It might provide us some cost savings, if we need a new generator here, we might as well do both buildings at the same time. If we're gonna do a remodel of the second floor and people are going to be here and they've got their equipment, it's a cost savings to have them do second floor and they get that done and they pivot to third floor. So I think there's some things like that we can build in that are going to be helpful to us.
I think that 10-year look ahead is a good time frame to say, okay, what we're planning here will get us through another 10 years. And then there'll have to be another plan after that, either reassessing and continuing to improve, or, yeah, it's time for replacement.
Wait. You say 10 years, it sounds like we have to spend the money in 3 years.
Yes, to make it last 10 years, to make the facility functional for 10 years.
Oh, I misunderstood.
Yep.
Okay.
And I think if we don't have a page and a half of projects, when something comes up, it's gonna be easier to say, okay, how are we gonna work on this? How are we going to fix this? Instead of when highway needs a new generator, instead of us saying, okay, buy that part, do this, let's get another year, we can say, all right, let's do this.
Could you repeat what the idea was for the paying for the stuff we've been doing every year anyway, the equipment, the highway stuff? What, I didn't catch.
So my thoughts are, we do 2 million in short-term borrowing every year. So I think we've done up to 2, we've done as low as like 500,000. But if we do 1 million for equipment, because a truck is 500, a plow truck, the squads are usually 250. That gives a little extra room for a generator, whatever it may be. And if we don't need it, we don't take that out. And then 1 million for road projects.
So we'd be doing a 5 and a 2.
Yes.
5 would be for longer, the 2 would
Yes.
just be.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. But I mean,
Oh, yeah.
in terms of yearly impact on the tax levy.
Mhm.
Okay.
And the 2 million, if we went with that, there's 1 million dropping off the levy this year, so that'll just keep current borrowing as is, and then the new loan for the 5 million will be on top of it, and people would see that as
A little less pain.
And it's spread out a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not like a big hit one
Well,
year.
at least it's not new pain. We've been inflicting it on people that way for a while now, so it won't be new pain.
I guess the thing that again, with the 5 and then the 2 is that we keep getting surprised. I did not even realize there were things that had to be spent out of the highway department until just very recently. And I just hope there's nothing else like that pops up. And then
And that was my hope of doing this, is we take the surprises off the table.
As
So
much
we
as
have,
you can.
as much as we can,
Sure.
you know, and I think Josh has probably known these are issues, but thought, I'm not gonna bring it to you because I don't need it yet. And when I need it, then we'll talk about it. So my hope is we've brought all these issues, we've brought all these surprises forth in 5 years. So then when Randy comes to us, Josh comes to us, somebody comes to us, Chad at Pine Valley comes to us in 5 years and says, okay, we're gonna need this in the next year or two, we can be prepared for it. And we don't have to look at 15 things and decide what the priority is. And then do 2 out of 15, because that's all we can afford.
The county has had a history of, well, I don't need this right now, so I'm not gonna ask for it in any department you wanna name. And we have put things off and we have gotten by and we have limped along and, you know.
Reminds me of another question I had. So the project list, did we go back to those, the prior ones in 2022 and make sure we like captured all the stuff that had been flagged then? There was one that we did, gosh, maybe it was Clint, I forget,
He did.
where he had like all the way up through 2032 and it's no fun to look at on my iPad, so I didn't try it.
Yeah.
But it'd be nice to make sure, we probably did, but it'd be nice to double check that everything was on that list got captured.
I mean, Derek can jump in too. I did not go back and look at it, but I remember looking at it in the past and there were a lot of wants on there and not just needs.
Yes.
So we really tried to focus on needs.
Okay.
And I'll give you an example. Across the street, they had a want for an updated electronic health record system. They have one, it works, it meets the needs. Is it ideal? No. But the more you work with it, the more you use it, the more workable it is.
And I think that list was also created at a time when the county was in a different perspective, you know, the world was gonna end and everything. So I mean, there's lots of things on there. I understand why to look at them, but I think the value in really referencing that is so different now, so that it's not worth it.
The other thing we didn't have then was the venture study.
Yes, oh yeah, that's
Right.
true. Yes, correct.
Yeah.
It's a much different spot now.
It was more about talking to each department head and tell us what you think you need, and
Mhm.
yeah.
So it sounds like we have a little more breathing room to finish the master plan. We're not gonna try to make a wrap tonight.
Yeah, and my thought was, we've got the project list, that's here. If you guys are saying, yep, let's look to do the 2 bigger loans, give me time to put things together, and then we take it to executive and finance. Unless if you want to have this committee meet again, but I also know people are busy, and I think we've kind of gotten stuff together that it can be passed on to executive and finance to put a final plan together to take to full county boards.
If it's possible in the master plan, I still want to see some measure of building maintenance in budgets. It could build, it doesn't have to be the, you know, a huge amount right at the start. But if there could be something increased every year, because we keep running into this all the time. We haven't done that, anything to that building for 20 years. And if there's money in the budget in 10 years, when you need a new roof or whatever, you can do it without breaking the bank. It's-
So I know that for the courthouse, there's 20,000 that's put aside every year. And Randy and I actually talked about, do we have that increase since he's now responsible for more buildings? So that is something that we can look into with the budget. But I also know the budget's gonna be really tight. And we'll see what we can potentially do.
That's the beauty of the short-term borrowing, is it doesn't hit our operational budget, it hits the capital. So
I'm ignorant as to budgeting. I've covered all these meetings, but I've never been part of the budget process.
Welcome this year.
Here,
Right, I know.
part of the budget process.
Yes,
but-
yes.
And to add to the budget thing, so when we adopted this budget, we used $245,000 as the general fund to cover that budget. So while I appreciate the sentiment to put money aside and things like that, we need to figure out how to cover up that gap, you know, to make up that gap, so you're not using the general fund balance to balance the budget, because until you can do that, then saying we're gonna put so much aside is kind of irrelevant, because you gotta fill that gap from general fund first. So what that equates to this year is some really tough, not fun decisions being made on how we're gonna balance the budget without using general fund, but then beyond that, looking about, okay, well, what are we gonna cut back on then to save any money to put aside for maintenance? Because I think that's always been historically the problem for the county, is that there just hasn't been money that's been available to be set aside, or if it was set aside, it was used for something that, you know, not something bad, but just not for the purpose of deferred maintenance or something like that. So
Or the
this is-
deferred maintenance blew up bigger than
Yes,
something
right.
set aside was.
But I think that's where you're at that point where you have to pick and choose tough decisions to make that happen, because if we don't start making those, you can't do that stuff, and that's where the county is, so, and it has been.
And that's where, you know, I think there's a perception that we just want to cut services, and it's not at all about cutting services. It really is about how do we do things in the most economical way possible? How are we best stewards of county funds? And it's not because we don't like these programs or we don't like who's doing the programs. There's just not the money to do what we are required to do.
Are you okay with the administrator creating a facilities master plan, looking at the two structured borrowings for the maintenance needs with the longer term plan for jail and eventually up to possibility courthouse?
I had questions on how we're actually going to execute the work. Is it out of time or is that another time?
And that's where, like, at the last meeting, we kind of went through like thoughts for 27, 28. When Derek and I have had discussions, it's really about the safety first. Honestly, I think the first thing that we have to focus on is the courtroom floor. That has to be our top priority.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about which is first, and
Okay.
I'm talking about some of this stuff, they're almost like standalone little projects, and some of it logically needs to be done together. And I don't know if we're just gonna hand the whole shooting match to an engineering firm, or if there's some more efficient way to do some of it with more of our own resources or in a different way. I'm just trying to think if we really need full-blown engineering for all of it.
I don't think we'll need full-blown engineering for all of it. Some of it I think we can do. So, I guess my thought is we're gonna do what we can do, but we also know Randy's got limited amount of time.
Right.
And like Corey has said, he'll work with us on like a third floor remodel. Second floor in the DA's office needing more space. That's something where honestly, it's probably gonna have to start with public safety potentially, or public works. And that's my thought, is it pivots to public works for them to look at when do we do what? And what decisions we make. So does this need to be engineered? Does it not? We're not gonna engineer a new generator. We just need to swap them out. I think we do need to do some engineering for HVAC across the way. Some people say, let's try to get a whole new system in. Other people are saying we can't be without that building for 3 months to put a whole new system in. So we just need to replace, and people have to live with, this office is really cold and this office is really hot.
Honestly assessing, okay, does that buy us another 10 years?
Yes.
Or is it is that a Band-Aid that's only gonna last a few years?
Yeah.
Versus what would it take? And then, all right, if we are serious about remodeling spaces and reorganizing, do we need to find some temporary space somewhere that we could utilize while other spaces are being redone?
That's the other thing.
Yes.
Yeah,
And if that's the case, well, we'd have to have a plan for that, because it's gonna have a cost too.
yep.
But I think that's where we have the engineer come in and say, okay, here's your two choices. If you just replace this, is what it's gonna look like. But if we engineer it and we do this, this is how we could potentially make this be a more workable space into the long term.
If they do re-engineer it, maybe they look at, hey, that's a big flat area, can you throw some solar panels or something up there?
Yeah.
Help make it more efficient, so that by investing the capital money, we save some operational costs. Possibility.
So I think the funding piece will go back to executive and finance, and then I think public works will get the, okay, here's my proposal for the work that we do in the order that we do some of this stuff.
And we can still look at location for the jail.
Yes, that'll be a parallel project.
Well, that's a good question. What's the function of this committee gonna be then after this?
Might just be done.
That's kind of what I was wondering. If we get these recommendations to executive and finance, we may be done.
Yeah.
If the board as a whole chooses to set up an ad hoc jail site committee or something, you know, that could happen. But I think this committee, as it was created, once we make the recommendations, can be done.
Did you hear, Rod?
And that would probably be a good idea to have ad hoc committee for that.
I would think so. That would give them the ability to focus on that specific issue.
Yeah, I think that was the point of this committee, was to come up with the master plan, and once the master plan was done, the committee was done. Yep. So,
And I think the committee determined the projects, determined the time frame, and determined the funding model.
Yeah, but, I think one time we said 20 years, right?
And we did, and I think what we really looked at is some of these things can't wait 20 years.
No, understood, but I'm just saying that we get the 5 million chunks of projects done. We make sure our bonds get paid off so that we can take on more debt. And then we commit to build the jail. I'm just saying, is that it? Or, I mean, is there any more?
So I know with like capital improvement planning, we're doing 5 years out right now, where historically we've done 3. I know Clint did kind of this big master. So we're now looking 5 years out for developing those plans. So I think that'll be helpful, that we're always looking 5 years ahead. So that when we see things like, and that's a couple of notes I have on mine, you know, the county boardroom, the AV updates, same with the large courtroom. You know, do we build those into a plan where it's just one of those things that we do it in our budget? Do we try to start creating funds so that we're able to? Do we say, okay, these are the things that, even though we said we're only gonna do this and this with the funding, you know, are we gonna then invest an extra 20,000 to do those upgrades? That's some of the stuff that's on my list that I think we have to look at in the future and determine what is the best way to fund those projects.
I think certainly you're right.
There's still capital costs. Yeah.
And for any of these, if we're able to access grant funding or some other funding stream somewhere along the line too. If we're doing work in the courtroom and there happened to be another funding opportunity somewhere that we can tap that would help pay for it, then we'll definitely do our best to access those streams too.
And I think it's really important moving forward that, you know, when somebody comes to this committee, any committee, and says, all right, this needs to be replaced, and I know it needs to be replaced in the next 2 years, that we make an honest effort into fixing it. You know, we've got to stop with the, well, we'll worry about that another year, limp along another year. We've got to be proactive and stop doing some of those things.
Are we comfortable with the Health and Human Services building in terms of roofing and HVAC and all that?
I think the roof is pretty new. We've got the HVAC on here. We got to figure out what to do with the HVAC, because, you know, they have those 17 units that are all nearing end of life. So we really got to figure out, is that our best option to replace everything that's there with just unit for unit? And Corey and I have talked about, you know, if they're going to be out here doing a review of Simon's and giving us recommendations on Simon's for their HVAC, do we also have them do it across the bay? And even though we might not do it for 3 years over across the street, if we have a plan.
Does something like that, you have that many units, does it always have to be all done at the same time?
Well, and that would be nice, and that's what Randy's suggestion is we do a couple each year so that it's not such a big hit.
But that would say that we're staying with the same arrangement.
Correct.
And I think that's what they do in this building, is they replace a couple of heat pumps every year as they age.
And that's kind of what my question was. Is there could Corey or someone say, you know, if you do it all at once, you can go to this better, more central, or whatever. And I have no idea.
And that's what I'd like Corey to do. Yep, I'd really like him to say, here's your 2 options, but this is what I recommend you do.
How do we determine the dollar figure for the top part of your list?
I started working on some of it myself. Are you meaning like all the different projects? And then I've asked department heads to start working on that. So like a lot of the, third floor remodel, we're gonna need to get that from Corey. I don't know. Same with second floor remodel, we're gonna need to get some of that from Corey, first floor remodel. Yeah, so that's where I'm gonna need time to get those dollar amounts together.
It's been fairly recently that we've started looking ahead 5 years.
Mhm.
The scope of what we've laid out here will set us up to be good for 10 years, which is twice as long as we've even been recently. And then if we have a new jail facility built, okay, what's the 20-year plan for that? As we start getting new facilities coming online, or, you know, we look at our highway department, they add an extra storage building, okay, what does their 10 to 20 years look like then?
So which committee or which, would it be you, or how would we start looking at the scenario where we could do something with Richland Center?
Oh, like a public safety building?
So, yeah.
So I've had talks with Scott Gold. Scott Gold has had talks with Ashley. I know Billy and Clay have had discussions. I can just send an email out to those people and say, are we interested? And if so, let's start meeting.
We do have a city county ad hoc committee. It hasn't met yet, but we have that committee, so.
Yeah.
So for the agenda, if it ever meets.
And for right now, you know, Trish and Ashley need to meet with the new board chair and the new mayor. We know who the mayor is, but
Yeah.
whoever our board chair is, it's me or somebody else, sit down and have a chat and get to know the new mayor. And talk about some things.
I think when we're talking about fundraising, we need to involve our congressmen and our two senators. Because every once in a while, somebody gets lucky and they get a few million.
Yes.
That's what got the highway done out by Pine Valley.
We can do that. I know we did it in the city. Wasn't that much, but it was a couple of $100,000 and it really helped.
Yes.
Yep.
And we did, you know, Representative Ed Orton's office did email us that information for this year and said, if you want to submit something, I know Josh submitted a request. I know, Mike submitted a request for some stuff out at Simon. So one of the things though that they'll talk about with the new jail is you have to have a location and you have to have a plan. And it might be though that next year we make the request, even if we don't have everything, to start getting a name in start getting the projects in the hopper. But I also think, and we met with Representative Kurtz this morning, you know, with the innovation funds, that's really about collaboration. So there might in the future be some funds there if we look to merge some of these, even maybe not departments, but buildings together.
There would still be capital costs, obviously, but on the operations side of it, there might be some incentive from the
Say
state.
innovation funds, where that's where you work with another government entity and pass on or defer or somehow.
Yeah,
He told us that they did take out the part where you have to document the savings. That
yes.
was an early requirement of those. That's now taken out.
Okay.
So hopefully that will make those, he said, what, there's 11 applications now, or they only had 1 or 2 before, so they are seeing some more applications. There should be another round of that happening at some point.
But all the more reason for us to talk with Richland Center.
Yeah.
Wait. You know, those kinds of opportunities could exist in any number of areas. Public safety, we talk about with the city, maybe as we were looking at the ambulance, it's countywide ambulance someday that we're talking about, you know. There could be all kinds of different places we look at that.
Simons.
Assignments, yep.
Oh, yeah. That's a whole other chunk of money. It's gonna. So your target is to have your numbers and get it to the next stage for the executive finance?
Yes.
Which meeting?
I guess I would prefer to put it on an agenda once I get some rough numbers too.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Sometime in May.
I would guess the later May meeting or early June.
Like I said, take your time.
Yeah. Yes, yes.
So item 7 was facilities master plan. Item 8 was bonding. We've been talking about them both together here. Does the committee feel that we've got sufficient direction given to the administrator here for this to move on?
No plan.
Feel comfortable with it? I don't know that we need to take any formal action. You know, we made our opinions known here. The administrator will act on it, take it up to executive finance. As far as moving on to item 9, future agenda items, I don't know that we need to have any because I don't know that this committee will need to meet. So if it does need to, we can, as part of our organizational meeting tomorrow night, we can certainly, discuss the status of this committee. And our original timeline was that we would be done in April.
Yes.
So when we were created, so. Any correspondence under report? Right, and with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Kramer, second by Perry.
Oh, I was gonna.
Oh,
say
question
shiny
first?
guy, but that's okay.
All those in favor of adjournment, say aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.